Well, this escalated quickly, huh? As you can see from the change in background, I am in a new location. I am actually in Russia. More specifically, I am right under Moscow in a country house, which is why everything is wooden. I am staying here with my husband and also the cat, which is the only thing that I post on my Instagram stories these days. And also the thing that doesn't want to be filmed ever. Okay, you can get out now. And if you don't follow my main channel, on which I make friendship bracelets, or you just haven't watched every single video on there, you might be wondering how I ended up here, because last you saw of me, I was in London. And to be honest, I'm wondering the same thing. This entire situation, which I'm not going to be naming due to some very heavy YouTube restrictions, has escalated extremely quickly. And while I originally was planning to spend the entire time in London and sort of just wait for it to blow over, it quickly became a very unpleasant situation to be in. First of all, the situation in London is much more severe than here, which it still might get more severe here, I'm not saying that, but it is objectively better to be in a remote village where you're very far away from human contact, because the next house is a couple meters that way and then the one over there is even further, and then you've got a forest on that side and another one on the other side, you know what I mean? It's obviously much better than being in London, where you're in a flat block with like hundreds of people. But also where I live in London, I live with my flatmate. It's just the two of us. My husband was there for 6 months, and then at that point it was 3 of us, but usually it's just the 2 of us. And he left. He flew away back home to Lithuania and is now spending quarantine there with his family. So I ended up being completely alone, and while I was planning to go to Russia anyway on the 1st of April, my flight got cancelled. So I was pretty much stuck. And I didn't like the idea of spending quarantine completely isolated from any human contact, alone in a flat with no option of going outside whatsoever. So I talked it over with my parents a lot, and the whole conversation ended in me and my mum actually looking for flights. And when we were looking for flights, we saw that all the flights were extremely expensive. Prices that we have never seen before. We were heavily considering buying a flight for the 24th, which was twice less than the one for the 23rd. But my flatmate, thank you to him, very firmly told me that I really shouldn't do that and that I should get out as soon as possible, even if it is twice as expensive, because he heard a rumor somewhere, don't know where, that the UK was going to be closing its borders on the 23rd and that most flights will be cancelled. So we ended up buying a flight for the 23rd, which was ridiculously expensive, as I said. And that was a very surreal experience. As some of you know, I had already been in isolation prior to my flight for a while, pretty much 2 weeks, because I was sick for some time and because I had been showing some symptoms. They advised me to self-isolate just in case, even though there were no real suspicions that I may be infected. So I had already been in quarantine this entire time. Going out felt really weird, but especially going out to an airport, which has a lot of people in it, was incredibly weird. To be fair, everybody was wearing masks. I don't think I saw a single person who wasn't wearing a mask. Everybody was wearing masks. Everyone was super careful. The entire airport had a bunch of sanitizing stations and they pretty much forced you to use them, which I thought was very good. We then got on a flight and everybody was wearing masks, including the crew. And once we landed in Russia, we had a team of people come in on the plane in like full-on bodysuits and protective gear and measure the temperature of like a family sitting in the back. I don't know why it was specifically that family. Maybe they showed symptoms during the flight, maybe like they cough or they complained about a headache or something. I'm not sure, none of us were informed. I had assumed that they were going to check everyone's temperature, but no, it was just them, and then they left. We were then given these papers that we had to fill in, stating our names, where we were flying from, if it was a transit flight or a direct flight. We had to fill in our passport numbers, our addresses. In Russia, you're sort of registered to a specific address, so we had to put in the registered address and also the address that you're actually going to be staying at, which for me was 2 different addresses, since I'm registered at my parents' house and I'm staying with my husband. And you basically had to sign this paper stating that you're not going to be leaving Moscow for 2 weeks. Which I would assume that they would put us on self-isolation, so that you would sign a paper saying you're going to self-isolate for 2 weeks, but it was just a paper saying that you won't leave the city. And as far as I've heard, that's actually pretty well enforced. I don't know how, but somehow they track these people who fly in to make sure that they don't actually leave the cities. And if they do catch you leaving the city, they will fine you. I mean, for me, it's a non-issue because I'm planning to self-isolate here for a while anyway. I didn't even go to see my family, which is my parents, my sister, my grandma, because my grandma is a very high-risk group and I didn't want to risk infecting her with anything that I may have caught in the airport or before. But still, I just found that interesting that it wasn't a self-isolation for 14 days, it was a not leaving Moscow for 14 14 days sort of agreement that we were signing. And it does state on the paper as well that it is a criminal offense to not do that, basically. Once that happened, that took a long while after the plane landed. We spent probably like half an hour sitting in the plane, filling all that out. Once that happened, they let us off the plane and we went to passport control. And then once passport control happened, they let everyone out and you got to see this giant group of people wearing these suits and like protective gear and stuff. And I had assumed that they would be testing everyone, or at least measuring everyone's body temperature and testing those who have a high body temperature. But no, they didn't even take my temperature. They literally just looked at my piece of paper, and I had signed that I was gonna stay in Moscow for 14 days because that's what I'm planning to do. And they were like, okay, just leave. And they only tested those who said that they wouldn't be staying in Moscow for 14 days because they had to go to a different city or, you know, had other travel plans, whatever, they had to leave. They only tested those people. And I'm not even sure they tested them. I'm pretty sure they just took their temperature and then isolated them if they had one. I don't know. I just found that really weird and I don't get it. If someone knows and can explain, I would be grateful because I genuinely don't understand the whole point of that. The fact that they didn't even check my body temperature baffles me, because what if I had one? Does it matter that I'm gonna stay in Moscow for 14 days and not leave? I could come into Moscow, infect someone else, and then they could leave Moscow in that 14-day period, you know what I mean? So it's not gonna help that I'm gonna stay in Moscow. That was just a very weird experience. And then on my way from the airport to where we're staying now, literally as I was driving in the taxi, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister in the UK, announced a full lockdown on the UK, which means that nobody is allowed outside of their houses at all, except for doctor's appointments, essential grocery shopping, and one form of exercise per day at a safe distance from other people. There are police in the streets carefully monitoring everyone's comings and goings and finding those who are not complying with these restrictions. All non-essential businesses are closed, all the schools are closed and everything, even though that has been happening for a while, but basically life as we know it stopped completely. And I know this has been the case in a lot of countries already, such as Italy, obviously Spain, some states in the US, some other European countries like Lithuania, because Thomas is there and he's telling me about that. I know that other countries are also doing this, and the UK is pretty late in doing that, but just the fact that this lockdown was announced as I was driving home from the airport, having just flown out, baffles me, because I was pretty much one of the last flights out before they completely shut down the country. And if Thomas, who is my flatmate, hadn't told me specifically that I should buy a ticket for the 23rd and not the 24th, as I had originally planned, I would have been stuck. There are efforts to get Russian citizens back to Russia from other countries, but first of all, I'm a dual national, so as long as I am in the UK, I'm considered a British citizen exclusively, and the Russian government can't really do anything to get me out of there because they pretty much have no authority over me since I am in my other country, if that makes sense. Same now, as I'm in Russia, I'm considered fully a Russian citizen, and the British government can't do anything to retrieve me if they want to, or whatever. But also, if the country is in lockdown, there's not much the Russian government can do to bring you over. Basically, it's an extremely complicated situation that I'm so glad I avoided and I didn't get stuck in the UK for God knows how long. The current lockdown is for 3 weeks. They can look at the situation again after that 3 weeks is up and sort of reconsider, but I'm just so glad that I'm not alone in the flat for months, potentially. And that I can actually be with my husband, who I'm long distance with, so actually being together is amazing. And also the cat that I love, which I can't show you because she doesn't want to be in the video. The amazing perks of also being here is the fact that we are in a country house, and the country house comes with sort of a giant plot of land. So you can go outside and walk around this plot of land. We can do barbecues and stuff and just sit outside and enjoy the fresh air, look at the beautiful sunset and stuff. There are also, as I said, 2 forests, one either side. We're sort of in between 2 forests. And we can actually go into those forests and walk around and again enjoy nature, enjoy the breeze, enjoy the sunshine, and still be completely isolated from any human contact because there's barely any people in this entire village. And for that, I know that I am extremely lucky because so many people are stuck in just their flats with loads of people in them as well, because some people have a lot of family. So I do consider myself extremely, extremely lucky in this regard, that I do have the option to actually go out and exercise for a little bit and just enjoy the sunshine. And I'm so happy that I made it out in the last second, pretty much, and that I'm able to spend this time with my husband, at least. Now again, I can't see my family for a while because my grandma is an at-risk group, and I'm pretty sure that even after the 2 weeks sort of quarantine period is up for since I was last at the airport, so in case I contracted something at the airport, I have to wait 2 weeks to see them. I'm pretty sure Russia's gonna announce a quarantine before then, so I'm probably gonna end up not seeing them for longer. And even if they don't, we're probably just gonna voluntarily stay in quarantine for a longer time. Basically, I just really want to protect my grandma, so I'm gonna hold off on seeing my family for an indefinite amount of time. But yeah, it's still good to just be here. It is a really weird feeling though. I haven't lived in Moscow for 3 years, ever since I moved to London for university. So it is really weird to be here and not know when I'm gonna leave. Ever since I have moved to London, the most I've come here for was probably like a month, maybe 2 during some summers. And I have a feeling this time it's gonna be more than 2 months. We shall see, of course, but... So it definitely is very, very weird to be back and to pretty much be living here for now. I don't know how to describe it, but growing up I've always had like these two cultures, the Russian and the British culture sort of merge in me. A lot of kids of immigrants will relate to me, I guess, where you have this sort of weird mixture of the two cultures rather than one more than the other, I guess. I don't know. But coming back here after living in the UK for so long feels really weird. I feel very out of place, if that makes sense. I feel like I don't know how to speak to the people around me. Not that I do, because I'm self-isolated, but even at the airport, talking to the people at the passport control or like the taxi guy who drove us from the airport, it's a very different sort of social structure, and I feel like I've just lost the ability to speak normally to Russian people. I don't know how best to describe that for it to make sense. Being here definitely feels weird, especially still having to do online lectures and essentially still being at university and having to do deadlines and writing my dissertation and submitting all of that while being here is very weird. Very, very weird indeed. As for filming my videos and such, I tried to bring all my lights and my equipment to be able to film from here still. I managed to bring the lights, but the actual tripods holding those lights up didn't fit in my suitcase, so I need to buy tripods for my lights, which is fun. I'm currently filming with just the sunshine, which hopefully looks okay. I don't have access to my computer, which I'm very sad about because that computer is very, very powerful and renders videos in like 5 minutes and has a massive screen, which is like this big. So I can see the timeline very clearly and I can edit very easily. This laptop is like this big, it's tiny. I'm now watching this back in editing and I realize that that clip sounds incredibly insensitive to people who actually have real problems. I genuinely don't mean to offend anyone. I do realize that I'm in an incredibly privileged position, being that at least part of my income comes from online through YouTube and I'm still able to do my job, unlike a ton of people, including my colleagues at the restaurant where I work part-time, who are completely out of work and income. And also, as I said before, I'm incredibly grateful that I am in a place where I can go outside and still be isolated from human contact. So I definitely understand all of those things and I don't mean to offend anyone when I'm saying this. It's just more of like ranty first world type problems, which I'm kind of considering cutting out of the video now, but I thought I might keep it in anyway. I don't know. And it takes hours to render videos, which is not fun. Anyway, just life is really weird right now. In the matter of days, not even a week, my whole perception and my whole understanding of what my life is going to be like in the near future changed completely. Like even the country changed of where I'm going to be, and it's just... Anyway, I consider myself to be extremely lucky because I managed to get out and I'm now with my husband and in a beautiful place where I can have some exercise and enjoy the sunshine. I know that some of you guys have it much harder and I hope that everyone is staying safe and is okay and self-isolation isn't treating you too badly, even though it can be very difficult. If you didn't know, on my second channel where I do friendship bracelets, I launched a challenge that I'm going to be updating every couple of days. I'm going to be doing a new challenge every few days just to keep it going because I know that everyone's at home and everyone is bored. I want to give you guys something to do. The challenge is divided between sort of complete beginners who have never made bracelets before to intermediate and advanced. So whatever level you are, you can join in on the challenge and have some fun. So I'll leave the first challenge video linked in the card and in the description so you can check it out and join in if you want, just to have, you know, something to do and to be part of a community, I guess. Anyway, I guess I just wanted to share my experience with, you know, this whole self-isolation thing and just flying out pretty much last minute right before the lockdown happened. I hope you guys are staying safe. I post on this channel pretty much whenever I want. I don't really have a set schedule yet, but I hope you guys enjoy this video nonetheless, and I will see you next time. Bye!